Coming up today, Russian President Vladimir Putin says Turkey's shooting down of a Russian jet on the Syrian border will have serious consequences. International leaders call for calm. Saying Korea is no longer immune to terrorism, President Park Geun-hye urges Parliament to swiftly pass pending anti-terror legislation. Plus, the two Koreas swap lists of officials who will take part in working-level talks set for Thursday. Stay tuned for these stories and more. Hello to our viewers around the world. It's 6 a.m. on Wednesday, November 25th here in Seoul. Thank you for joining us. I'm Mark Broome. And we start with Turkey's downing of a Russian warplane near the Syrian border and the reaction to it. Russian President Vladimir Putin has described the downing as a stab in the back by accomplices of terrorists. He also warned Turkey that the incident would have serious consequences for the country's relations. The Turkish government claims the Su-24 attack aircraft violated its airspace on numerous occasions and failed to heed warnings to leave. Now, Putin rejects that claim, saying the jet was about 1 kilometer inside the Syrian border when it was hit. NATO, of which Turkey is a member, has called for calm and de-escalation of what it called a serious situation. The alliance says its assessment is the same as Turkey's, that the Russian jet entered Turkish airspace. Now, in regards to the two Russian pilots, their fate is uncertain at this point. There are unconfirmed reports one pilot was shot dead by rebels after he ejected from the jet. France and the United States have agreed to intensify their respective air campaigns in Syria and Iraq to target the Islamic State group in the wake of the terror attacks in Paris. Speaking at a joint press conference with US President Barack Obama at the White House on Tuesday local time, French President François Hollande said there would be more airstrikes, but France would not be putting boots on the ground in Syria. Obama said his country stood in unity with France and would deliver justice to the terror group. Now, on the downed Russian plane, both leaders urged Russia and Turkey to avoid escalation. Obama said it was important to make sure the Russians and the Turks were talking to each other to find out exactly what happened and take measures to cool the situation. It has emerged that France has carried out more than 1,200 searches in its fight against terrorism. According to the country's interior minister on Tuesday, French police have arrested more than 160 people and seized some 230 weapons in the security crackdown since the deadly attacks in Paris. He said nearly half of the weapons are long firearms and war weapons, which reflects the effectiveness of all these raids. The search continues in the southwest of France for Olivier Corel, who is the latest person wanted by French police in connection with the attacks. Now, over in Belgium, a European and international arrest warrant has been issued for Mohamed Abrini. Prosecutors say 2 days before the attacks, Abrini was seen driving a car with suspect Salah Abdeslam at a petrol station on the motorway to Paris. That's a mugshot of him there. Abdeslam is currently the subject of an international manhunt after the attacks, which killed 130 people. Now, back here in Korea, but connected to terrorism, anti-terrorism efforts, President Park Geun-hye convened an urgent cabinet meeting on Tuesday where she emphasized the importance of Parliament quickly passing anti-terrorism legislation. Our Park Geun-hye has more.
No longer a safe zone as far as terrorism goes. That is how President Park Geun-hye referred to Korea during an emergency cabinet meeting on this Tuesday morning. The Korean leader urged effective action in addressing the threat of terrorism, calling on her government to beef up the country's readiness for any potential threats. To this end, she also called on lawmakers to pass several anti-terrorism bills currently pending in the Parliamentary Intelligence Committee, some of which have been pending for more than a decade. The bills were originally introduced in response to the 9/11 terror attack in the U.S. in 2001. Since then, their approval process has been stalled due to disputes among lawmakers about the extended role outlined for the nation's spy agency.
우리 국민들의 생명과 안전은 정부만의 책임이 아닙니다. 국민들의 선택을 받은 정치권 전체가 국민들을 지켜야 할 의무가 있는 것입니다.
The president also called on the assembly to swiftly ratify currently pending 3 FTA deals with China, New Zealand, and Vietnam, as well as other economy-related bills, including those related to labor reform and the service industry, in order to revive the ailing economy. President Park also had sharp criticisms for lawmakers, accusing them of neglecting their parliamentary duties.
맨날 앉아서 립 서비스만 하고 경제 걱정만 하고 민생이 어렵다고 그러고 자기 할 일은 안 하고 이거는 말이 안 됩니다. 위선이라고 생각을 합니다.
She also expressed her concern over a massive public rally held in central Seoul earlier this month. An estimated 70,000 people from roughly 50 groups joined the rally to protest the administration's policies. Calling the rally illegal and violent, she said protesters were attempting to paralyze the government and circumvent the rule of law, and demanded stern punishments for all illegal acts committed during the event. Park Ji-won, Arirang News.
Now, Korea's spy agency says 10 Korean nationals have attempted to join the extremist group that calls itself Islamic State. Officials say the latest revelations highlight the risk of terrorist activities happening inside the country. Connie Kim has this report.
Local South Koreans that have shown support for the Islamic State group online have been revealed to be more than just supporters. The National Intelligence Service said Tuesday 10 citizens have close links to the extremist group and even made attempts to become official members. Spy officials reported that questions they posted online were very specific, asking about details on how to get into Syria and how to get in touch with an ISIS member. Experts say this revelation shows that potential terror activities by ISIS on home soil is a real threat.
It's important to prevent any possible terror attacks. Establishing a database to track suspects linked to terrorism is just one of the security measures Korea can take.
Professor Lee adds that while there are concerns a state spy agency could misuse the personal information of citizens, such measures have to be considered in order to stop terrorists. South Korea is one of 62 countries listed by ISIS as target nations, accused of being part of a so-called modern crusader alliance against the group. This has struck fear among the public. A recent poll showed that 70% of locals surveyed said there is a possibility South Korea could face a terror attack similar to what Paris suffered this month. And more than half said terror groups like ISIS could launch an attack in the country. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
Now, preparations for a round of inter-Korean talks are running relatively smoothly. Seoul and Pyongyang have exchanged their lists of delegates that will be taking part in the working level meeting that is scheduled for Thursday. Kwon-soo reports.
Kim Gi-young, head of South Korea's Unification Ministry's Special Office for Inter-Korean Dialogue, and Hwang Chol, a senior North Korean official from the Committee for the Peaceful Reunification of Korea. These two men will be leading the inter-Korean working-level talks slated for Thursday. Seoul's Unification Ministry said both sides will be represented by 3 officials each.
North Korea proposed holding working-level talks on November 26th in Panmunjom. We accepted the invitation and will be discussing details for holding governmental talks.
The ministry previously announced that Kim Gi-young would lead the delegation, just as he had done in 2013.
The most important delegates for these level of talks have been chosen. Hwang Chol's participation can be translated as a new arrangement in dealing with inter-Korean relations under the Kim Jong-un regime.
The talks are meant for the two Koreas to arrange details for high-level talks, including where, when, and what the agenda will be. Experts say when the two sides meet this week, they may also address regular reunions for war-separated families, which is a priority for South Korea.
Since Hwang Chul played a big role in early talks and reunion events, there could be a positive outcome.
But Hwang is also predicted to bring up the resumption of tourism to the Mount Kumgang resort, which is a North Korean priority. Joint tours there were halted in 2008 after a South Korean tourist was shot dead by a North Korean soldier. Kwon So-ah, Arirang News.
Now, the U.S. economy grew more than originally estimated last quarter, climbing in the 2% range. Figures released by the U.S. Commerce Department on Tuesday showed the U.S. economy grew at an annual rate of 2.1% in the July to September period. That's an advance from the previously estimated growth of 1.5%. The department said the increase reflects the positive contribution from personal consumption expenditures and government spending. Although the revised figure lags behind the 3.9% gain posted in the second quarter, experts say it should give the Federal Reserve confidence as it considers raising interest rates at its next meeting in mid-December. Korea's household debt in the third quarter grew at its fastest pace ever. The central bank says the record growth came largely from increased spending. Still, many are concerned about the debt problem becoming a sticking point for the country's recovery momentum. Hwang Jae has the details.
Signs advertising major sales line the streets of Myeongdong, one of Seoul's busiest shopping districts. The sale events are part of a campaign kicked off recently by local retailers that's similar to the Black Friday event launched by the Korean government last month.
I didn't know shops were having sales, but they were. So I bought more than I was going to.
These measures to jumpstart spending are good for the economy, but they also come with a price for the consumer: high credit card bills. The Bank of Korea says third quarter household debt, which includes sales on credit, grew at its fastest pace since 2002 when the data was first compiled. The amount of debt stood at over $1 trillion as of the end of September, up roughly $30 billion from the end of previous quarter.
The growth of household loans slowed down slightly in the July to September period from the quarter before, while sales on credit shot up during the same period.
Still, experts say it's too early to feel at ease just yet, as sales on credit take up just a small portion of total household debt. Household loans, including mortgage loans, rose around $26 billion in the third quarter from the previous one. Experts say the debt problem is likely to become a potential risk for the economy.
Korea's household debt is on the rise due to the balmy real estate market since the second half of last year. The snowballing debt level is not a threat to the economy at the moment, but it could become one in the next 2 to 3 years when the property market loses steam.
In order to prevent the debt problem from catching up to the economy in the near future, Im adds that it's critical for the authorities to work on restructuring the debt to make it easier to repay. Hwang Jae, Arirang News.
Now, 6 years ago to this day, Korea became a member of the OECD's Development Assistance Committee, meaning it officially became a donor nation. For a look back at Korea's rather brief history in the organization and its role going forward, our Lee Soo-eun has this report.
Here in Korea, November 25th is also known as Official Development Aid Day, as it's a day when the country joined the OECD's Development Assistance Committee 6 years ago.
Korea's becoming member of DAC means that Korea now has to help other countries as not only moral obligation but also mandatory obligation as a part of a national policy.
Korea's brief donation history began 2.5 decades ago with small volunteer dispatches and modest loans. But since then, Korea's contributions in development aid expanded in volume, amounting to a total of over $2 billion in 2013, a 60-fold jump. And there's still more that Korea has to offer.
It's not just about economic development or science and technology. Korea can share its learning on balanced development, like know-how in social development and experience in democratization.
President Park Geun-hye also vowed to expand Korea's assistance to developing countries in a speech to the UN Sustainable Development Summit last September.
개도국 발전을 위한 재정 지원을 꾸준히 확대하고 개발 협력의 질을 높이기 위해서 노력해 나가겠습니다.
With the president's ODA drive, the government aims to expand its assistance volume by 35% to 0.2% of its total gross national income by 2020. Lee Soo-in, Arirang News.
Well, that's all we have for now on this Wednesday morning here in Seoul. Thank you as always for watching. We'll be back throughout the day with more newscasts. Goodbye.